It's hard to imagine that we've done 200 episodes. I started at home with George because I wanted to give people a place where they can come and talk about not only how they're feeling, but how to manage. It was before I was hearing from people. I just felt that there was a need to have a venue for people to go to because a lot of the places were shut down and people were at home. And I was at home, and I wanted other people to feel like they were at home. Yes, there's some good to talk radio. You know, when I used to listen to NPR on my way driving somewhere, and sometimes I would feel like, well, I wish I had more time to listen and to really reflect on life and how people are living it fully and creatively. There was just a desire to serve, desire to alleviate suffering, a desire to express what I felt I wanted to say, what needed to be said. So I had something to say. It was more like responding to the voice inside that says we need to do something. We need to help. There's an opportunity to be of service here. There was a lot of fear and uncertainty, but also we were doing something new. And oftentimes we learn from trial and error. And so you try and you see what works and you adapt to it. But I felt like it may have been driven by the need to really help people. And sometimes we overdo things or we try too hard. And I think we were trying hard and equating being effective with longevity or having something to say instead of being able to use less words but be able to have more of an impact. So it's like the spiritual journey of learning how to say a lot with a few words. It's like less is more. And then realizing that people don't want a long diatribe, they just want something like a little bit more than a bumper sticker. Yeah. I say it's a way of being, actually. It's a way of being open to what is happening in spite of the unpleasantness, or maybe it's so pleasant that we want to get carried away by it, but it's to have a little equanimity or an ability to just let things that are presented to us speak in its own language, because we have a tendency to see something and then we either say it's good or bad, or I don't want to go there, or oh yeah, I remember this from before. And it's really more about understanding that the only time we have is now. And so we want to be present for it, and we want to see things as they're happening now, not as we remember them or not as they might be or were in the past or might be in the future, but as they are right now. Well, it's interesting. I was listening to an interview with Oprah Winfrey and M. Scott Peck, and he basically said what I believe is like you tend to teach or talk about things that you're going through, things that are affecting your life, or people, your friends and neighbors and relatives, what they're going through. So it was really just tuning into what was happening. Well, the peek behind the curtain is we may spend 2 hours just to get a 5-minute conversation. And so it's a process of going through and reflecting on what might be helpful, how we do it, what's the content going to be. So I remember hearing that John Wooden, he used to have these meticulous practice script notes. He had them on 8x4 cards or something like that. But he and his coaches used to spend 2 hours coming up with a practice plan. So I think we're in good company. So every episode is framed by embracing, saying yes to whatever comes up and generating the hope. And so that pretty much is saying that one of the things that's really important is being able to say yes to life, to be able to see something. And of course, the 4A's are part of that, this idea of having awareness, saying yes to whatever's coming up, and generating the hope where we have the confidence and the understanding that there's a lesson to be learned here. There's something to be learned. And once again, I was listening to Oprah Winfrey interviewing M. Scott Peck, and he talked about holiness. Is that maybe what's happening is happening so that we can learn something and we can share it with others, so it's for the greatest good, the highest good. So this idea of holiness, or making something holy, has to do with being able to understand that once we understand something, we can do something about it. There was something that came out that said, do this. And so that's following your heart once your heart is trained. Well, I'd like to talk about having an open mind, open heart even more. And I think that's really important, because when we can be still and know, when we can be still and listen, then there's something that comes out of it. So I believe that every week that we sit down, when Greg and I sit down, we contemplate and we talk about it, but there's no agenda. It's just a willingness to let whatever needs to be express itself. It's a willingness to listen and to really think about it and to feel it through. And so it's really more about getting with ourselves. I say that all the time, you gotta get with yourself. You gotta sit down and listen. And a lot of times we don't do that because we're so busy with the external things, and we're always looking out here. It's very seldom that we're able to look in here. So I'd say a lot of what I do, a lot of my teachings, is really directing people back inside, back into their self, where all of the wisdom and all the knowledge, that eye of the hurricane, but also there's an inner wisdom, there's a knowing that we can access. But it usually shows up as a still small voice that's easily drowned out. So we need to have this solitude or silence, or going into the silence, as Neville Goddard would talk about. Just be still and know. And there's a silence that once we drop down below everything, there's a wisdom in the silence that's there that we need to access. And it's like any other muscle. If you don't access it, it'll be challenging to access it, but the more you access it, the more you have access. And I like to think that what we're offering is giving people that opportunity to pause and reflect. Well, you don't have to go far. It's right in our face most of the time. And it's either what we're experiencing or what we're seeing other people experience, but it's normally around ourselves and our family members and our friends, or just acquaintances. Or maybe I'm in the grocery store and I see something and it indicates to me, oh, that would be interesting. So I would say the most important thing is the openness and the curiosity, and being willing to just entertain things. And this interesting thing about it, and one of the things I found as we were doing more and more of these episodes, it's not what I was doing, it was what I was noticing. So I noticed that when we do it, there's a knowing that says, okay, this is it, when to end. And I can't quantify that. I don't even know when I'm gonna end, but I do know that I've been disciplined about listening to that knowledge, that knowing. The goal is for people to say yes to life, and to have enough confidence to know by saying yes to life, they're creating a possibility of being able to learn what they need to learn. It's not clear to me what I want to accomplish as we go, other than doing what we're doing, but I have faith that I'll know when I need to know. And so I know that sounds a little bit hokey, but it's like right now, there's still a lot of work to be done, and it's evolved quite a bit over the 200 episodes. And I'm pretty sure if you were to listen to the first 10 or 20 episodes and then compare them to the last 10 or 20 episodes, it'll be like light years away. And so that is like having a journal and making journal entries and then going back to 4 years ago and realizing that there's going to be a pattern there, but also how far we've come from just chipping away at it, just doing it week by week, and realizing that we're probably way more open to our experiences now than we were back in March of 2020. What do I get out of this? It's not about that. It's about me serving and understanding that a lot of what I get out of this is going to be what we call implicit or non-declarative learning, which means that I won't know it until it shows up. And then it will be dawn on me. It might be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, or maybe even next week, where I realize, oh, I didn't know I learned that. And so this is what we mean. So what do I mean by implicit learning? Well, the best example that I think that illustrates this is when you learn how to ride a bike, you never forget. Can't quantify it, but you learn it. So you learned it implicitly, and once you learn how to ride a bike, you always know how to ride a bike. So it's like that. And so there's some things we learn, and I'll give you an example. I listened to The Power of Myth, Joseph Campbell. I actually wore out DVDs and VHSs I had back in the day because I listened to them so many times. And what I noticed when I was listening to them is that I knew what he was going to say before he said it. So it reminded me that we have a pattern detector. We learn better unconsciously than trying to learn on purpose. Like we're thinking, well, what did he say in that? It's better if we just let it sink in, if we are willing to just allow it to speak to us. We get more out of it. I was asked this question around other things, and I'm not done yet, so I can't answer that. I say the message is what we talk about, creating a possibility of being able to say yes to life, to embrace whatever comes up, generate the hope, and then learn the lessons that are presented, or the lessons that we need to learn. I think it's really that simple. Love and blessings, and may you continue to say yes to life and generate the hope and make wise choices.